what are the substances and strategies that people are using to dope in freediving, and how long has that been a thing?
Yeah, I didn't know about it either until just recently, and I was kind of like oblivious, I guess, and also a little bit ignorant. Like I was under the impression that there weren't any substances that could assist in freediving, or at least it would be too dangerous to try to use these. But yeah, just in the last few years, we've figured out, we've realized how wrong we were. Um, and I can tell you some of the substances that we know are being used, but I'm sure that there's others which we don't know about that are being used as well. So steroids, while having kind of like a big physique, definitely isn't in itself beneficial to freediving. Something I didn't find out until this year is that steroids also drastically increase your red blood cell count to the point where some bodybuilders apparently have to take other drugs in order to reduce their red blood cells back down again. And
Mm.
red blood cells are pretty much like the holy grail of freediving because it's like a free, incompressible form of oxygen. If you put more air in your lungs, that's more buoyancy, so it becomes problematic in the dive because you have to put on more weight or you have to use more energy to go down. But any oxygen that's stored in your red blood cells, having more of those is like a free lunch. So that's definitely one area that we know that freedivers are doping because we've caught a few of them now using steroids.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was gonna say, I think Lance Armstrong was using, it was EPO and blood
mhm,
transfusions,
mhm.
and
And so
that
that's
was
even more difficult.
and that was giving his spiking his red blood count for the Tour de France, or just like all those insane races, the
Yeah,
EPO.
absolutely. So that's probably happening in freediving as well. But it's so difficult to detect. The only way to really detect that kind of thing is through what they call a blood passport, where they monitor your blood levels over the course of a year or more. And if there's some kind of like unexplained spike, then the only explanation for that can be this form of doping. But we just don't have the money in freediving in order to pay for those kind of tests, which are extremely expensive.
Hmm.
So that could well be happening. But another thing we've discovered this year is happening is that there's some classes of drugs which aren't actually on the WADA list, but seem to have a performance enhancing benefit. And the reason we know that is from some of the literature around these drugs, but also the fact that we've caught some athletes now with huge quantities of these drugs in their possession, and obviously no prescription or therapeutic use exemption for them. And so these are drugs like benzodiazepines, so just your Xanax, Valium. Um, those drugs suppress the nervous system, slow down the heart rate, and they may have other benefits as well as calcium channel blockers. We're just kind of learning about this as we go. But it seems like, yeah, there's some huge benefits to benzodiazepines. And funnily enough, you can crack any number of jokes about this. Sildenafil, Viagra, seems to have a benefit in freediving performance, or at least that was found in the possession of these athletes, including a female athlete.
Okay.
So, and then there's some research that shows that it isn't necessarily beneficial for most sports, except if you're in a hypoxic situation, such as at altitude. Then it's been shown by the research to be beneficial. And obviously, freediving is the ultimate hypoxic sport. So that's another one that needs to be on the list. And there may be others as well. But yeah, the ones that people have been caught for so far have mostly been the steroids and also this year masking agents, which are diuretics that are used to kind of mask other substances that have been taken previously. But I think it feels like it's only the kind of tip of the iceberg. The number of drugs and the number of athletes out there who are using them is probably far greater than we know.
Yeah, the Viagra. I mean, you don't want blood being diverted below your waist during a free dive, I'm sure. Like you need
Yeah.
that blood to go back into your lungs and, because that's part of like the mammalian dive reflex. It goes to the center of your body.
Mm.
So I imagine the other effects of Viagra, just having a raging boner would cancel out the hypoxic effects. But like the other ones that you mentioned with the possible EPO, beta blockers, Xanax, that stuff, I could totally see how that could be an advantage with being able to slow down your breathing, slow down your thoughts, like not
Mm.
being as freaked out. I know a lot of people take that before public speaking and things like that. So
Mm.
it makes sense that would help you navigate those high pressure situations.
Mm. Mm. And yeah, that ability to stay relaxed and calm in the lead up to a dive is so critical for performance. And like half of what I've done in my career has been targeted at that ability, that mental control. Freediving is physical and mental, and both require kind of complete control. And so if you just take a drug to shortcut all of that, then yeah, that's a huge performance benefit. Not to mention the kind of the physical effects of that drug as well on the metabolism, on the heart rate, and everything else. So yeah, we're seeing athletes who kind of making these ludicrous jumps in performance with very poor technique and new to the sport. They're not training in any new way or particularly hard, and so it was kind of clear. And there's also all kinds of kind of eyewitness testimony of them opening up rucksacks full of boxes of pharmaceuticals and ex-girlfriends talking about it when they're drunk at after parties. So we had all this kind of mountain of evidence, and this year, with a slightly more refined approach to anti-doping, managed to catch out a few of these key athletes who probably have been spreading the practice within the community more than anyone else. So the idea is to kind of cut the head off the what is it, the chicken,
Yeah.
and and take it out that way. But I fear for the sport because it's almost like a cancer where the central tumor creates these other tumors, and if those are spreading as well, then you're screwed. So I hope that we've caught it early enough in order to be able to do some damage. But knowing how insidious it is as a practice and a culture, I kind of fear for the worst.
Yeah, and besides it being an unfair advantage, it seems like it would be super harmful to the diver themselves to block those signals that are
Mm.
telling you that something wrong or that's you I imagine it would be a detriment to the diver in terms of their own safety to cut off the things that their body is trying to tell them when you're at that depth, as opposed to just feeling all those signals and then just dealing with them as you practice more and more.
Absolutely, yeah, and we don't know what kind of dangers are going to be exposed by these drugs, combining them with the pressure, combining them with other drugs, and then people who hear about athletes like these taking these drugs and they think, oh, maybe I'll try it. They don't know the dose, or maybe it's not safe for them because it's something else that they're taking. And so I feel like we're at risk of having a fatality due to these kind of substances being abused in freediving. And I hope it's not someone who's kind of doing it dumbly following the leaders in the sport.